What's up, everyone? Welcome to another UFC Quick Picks here on the Mayo Media Network. We have UFC Edmonton this weekend. Brandon Moreno versus Amir Albazi in the main event. 14 fights on the slate as it stands today, and a lot of competitive ones at that. So it should be an interesting card. I'm here to give you my favorite cash game play, tournament play, salary play, and a matchup I like on the slate as well. And let's just get right into it. I am rolling with Brandon Moreno at 8.5K in our main event as my cash game play of the week. Moreno is minus 172 to win this fight. His betting line has climbed up a little bit since open. Not a huge value at 8.5K, but a solid win equity target nonetheless, and 5-round potential. And I just think it's a good matchup for Moreno on paper, which of course doesn't always play out inside the octagon. But Moreno just has better metrics than Albazi does. Moreno lands 3.87 significant strikes per minute, 3.63 absorbed, 1.74 takedowns per 15 minutes, and 63% takedown defense. Amir Albazi is coming off a 5-round decision win against Kaikar France, in which he landed 39 strikes at distance. He got outlanded 90-39 at distance, and he got out wrestled numerically 2-1. And it's hard to project that kind of offensive production to beat a fighter like Moreno, because I do think Albazi could land a takedown or two here. He averages 1.7. He could land a couple takedowns against Brandon Moreno. Maybe he could take the back, but Albazi is defending takedowns at 40%, and like Brandon Moreno just, has gone through Alessandro Pantoja a few times. He's gone through Davidson Figueiredo. He knocked out Kaikar France himself. I just don't think Albazi's wrestling is going to be something he hasn't seen, where Moreno could just as easily land takedowns in this spot too, and Albazi didn't look great off his back against Kaikar France. Moreno's also a much more seasoned striker, especially from a volume standpoint, where Albazi, like I said, did not land many strikes at distance against Car France. Landed 68 significant strikes against Zumagulov in 2021, but Moreno's out there against the highest paced fighters in the division: Pantoja, Royval, Figueiredo, landing 112, 147, 109, 132 significant strikes. And I just think he's a more well-rounded fighter throughout. Not to say I won't play Albazi in tournaments at 7.7K. I think he's certainly viable there as a secondary target, but in cash games, 8.5K. The fight's projected over 4.5 rounds, minus 240. So Brandon Moreno is a really strong cash game target, and just a strong target in all formats there at 8.5K this week. All right, next up, my tournament play of the week. I am going to roll with Jasmine Jasudavicius at 9K. And you could argue that there are other fighters in this range who are just as strong or stronger. I think Mike Malot's a really good option too. I just like the work Jasudavicius does from top position. A couple fights ago, she fought Priscilla Cachoeira and beat her and submitted her late in the fight, but was credited with 326 total strikes. I think like 230 something non-significant strikes. Like when she gets on top, she is just throwing relentless ground and pound, and she scored 169 DraftKings points in that fight. It did come with a late finish. It came with ground domination anyways, but now she's fighting Ariane da Silva, who kind of struggles with defensive wrestling and has had some up and down performances, has had some good defensive wrestling performances, but finished on the mat by Antonina Shevchenko, finished on the mat by Montana De La Rosa, knocked out by Priscilla Cachoeira, and now coming off a loss to Karine Silva, where she gave up another 5 takedowns and 7.5 minutes of control. And like the only thing Jasudavicius can do is bully her way to the ground. She averages 2.3 takedowns per 15 minutes. She's pretty strong and physical and aggressive and somewhat, not even technical, but she's like competent enough. And I think the urgency, the physicality, the aggression, I think will lead to takedowns in this fight for Jasudavicius. And when she gets on top, I don't know that Silva can get back up, and Jasudavicius can just pour down strikes and has potential to rack up a lot of control, a lot of non-significant strikes, and perhaps clear the optimal lineup in a range where Malott is probably boom or bust. Lal probably needs an early finish, and I really like the ground equity for Jasudavicius in this spot. 9K, it's an expensive price to pay. It's not like you have to plant your flag on her and can't play anyone else in this range, but I think she has a really good matchup, and I like her ability to produce offense from top position. So 9K Jasudavicius, my tournament play of the week. All right, let's move on to my salary play of the week. We actually hit on Mateus Rebecki in in last week's video. So, hey, shout out to me, I suppose. No, shout out to everyone for the support. If you played him, you had a real shot at a winning tournament lineup there. I played a little bit of him, of course, but was probably on too much Max Holloway ultimately. Regardless, we're going with a similarly cheaply priced fighter here, Dustin Stoltzfus at 7.3K. I could have labeled this the matchup of the week because I like Marc-Andre Barriault as well at 8.9K, and I picked Barriault to win, but I think Stoltzfus is pretty live in this spot, and largely because Barriault just kind of has defensive issues. He's a offensively minded boxer. He can fight at a high pace, but in Barriault's losses, let's rattle off his losses back to 2020. First round KO, a decision in which he gave up 140 significant strikes, a third round submission in which he gave up 8 takedowns, and a first round KO loss. And I think it poses options for Stoltzfus. Stoltzfus is not a great fighter. Stoltzfus himself has been KO'd in the first round and back-to-back losses. So I think Barriault's a really strong tournament play too. But there's a lot of variance in striking exchanges. Barriault's been knocked out cold multiple times. These guys might bang it out early, and I think Stoltzfus at least has KO upside. And Stoltzfus should be the better wrestler here. Stoltzfus averages 2.4 takedowns per 15 minutes. His last win, he out-wrestled Punahele Soriano and submitted him, which isn't easy to do. And Barriault is a little bit hard to read because his last grappling-based loss came against Fluffy Hernandez, which there's no shame in that at all, but that was in 2022, and he hasn't really fought many grapplers since. So I don't think it's like a clear, obvious spot for Stoltzfus to dominate, but I do think Stoltzfus is the better wrestler here. I think he probably can land takedowns, and that plus the combination of knockout upside makes me pretty interested in him at 7.3K. He's coming off a highlight reel knockout loss himself, so I don't think the public's going to play him too much. Only plus 300 to win inside the distance there, but 7.3K with upside in a decent matchup. I like that fight as a whole, and I like Stoltzfus as my salary play of the week. All right, and finally, my matchup of the week. Let's roll with Caio Machado versus Brenson Ribeiro. Machado is minus 144, Ribeiro plus 125 on DraftKings. Machado's 8.5K, Ribeiro 7.7K. Ribeiro is, I think, 15-7 professionally, 15-6, 15-7. He's never won a decision, so all of his wins come inside the distance. He doesn't really have any durability, though. He's been knocked out early, he's been knocked out late, he's been knocked out standing, he's been knocked out on the ground. In the UFC, he's been knocked out once early in the first round, and then most recently he went to a decision and lost against Gadzi Yasilov. But the thing there was he had some success early. He landed a few takedowns early, looked pretty decent, and then just had nothing in rounds 2 and 3, which dates back to him not ever winning a decision in his career. And he was taken down 4 times in the final 10 minutes and controlled for like 8.5 of those final 10 minutes. So it sort of poses this matchup dynamic where Ribeiro, I don't like Ribeiro much. I'm not picking him to win, but when Ribeiro wins, it's early inside the distance. That's what his skill set is based on. He's a competent tie striker, competent wrestler, plus 200 inside the distance at 7.7K. I didn't pick him to win, but I think he has clear tournament winning upside if he wins, and is a very viable secondary option despite recent losses. Caio Machado is also 0-2 in the UFC, but at least he's gone the distance in both, and he went the distance in the Contender Series. There's definitely some bust risk in his profile because he's gone the distance a few times in a row, only plus 145 to win inside the distance, but he's going the distance against fighters like Don'Tale Mayes and Mick Parkin, who aren't just dead fish after the first 5 minutes and, are actually fighting back for the final 2 rounds. And if Machado finds himself in a position where he's has a gassed or a tired Ribeiro in front of him, then I think he could hurt Ribeiro, and he's a black belt in jiu-jitsu. I think he could get on top and potentially pose a threat there. Ribeiro's also been knocked out cold early too, so I think Machado at least has options for a win inside the distance. Coming off back-to-back losses, I don't think the public's going to be extremely excited to play him at 8.5K. Plus 145 inside the distance is not bad, so I like that. It's a risky fight, but it's one that I like for upside purposes, one that I hope to invest in above the field this week. All right, that's going to do it for this week's UFC Quick Picks. Thank you so much for the support. You can follow me on Twitter, Brett Appley, @TTP, EstablishTheRun.com for all your DraftKings breakdowns needs. Just went 2 hours with my boy Gordo Gambles breaking down every single fight on this slate. It's all 14, so highly encourage you to check that out. Breakdowns, rankings, all that good stuff will be up on ETR as well. Thanks to Pat and the team for having us on. Best of luck this week, and we will talk to y'all soon. Peace.